Within this lesson, we're going to talk about how to customize and begin to customize your JavaScript in order to really customize all of these share buttons. And this will give us the ability to add in additional social network sharing very easily with just the URL and just with a little bit of information that we're going to need. So we're going to be able to reuse and repurpose information. So over here on the right hand side, I've got the console open. I'm listing out all of my meta information. So I've got my Twitter description there, and I've got some information there. So again, quite a bit of information here, and this is all contained within the DOM for JavaScript. So if you're not familiar with the DOM, what it does is once the page loads, the DOM loads in all the different values that are available for the page. So all we're doing over here is we're just listing out those loaded values in a more readable format. So we're pulling out title there, we're pulling out an image there. And this again is from those OG tags that we had looked at earlier, where we're pulling in those OG tag information. And this gives us the ability to kind of reuse this OG information, and if we are setting it dynamically from our server, so if we're pulling in and we're setting all of this dynamically from the server, then we can actually also, we don't have to worry as much about what we're doing with the JavaScript, because it will just work if it's pulling that information from these files. And it saves us the trouble of having to rewrite things. So if we're sharing, we generally want to have this OG title. We're going to have some information here. We're going to have a URL that we're sharing, the description as well, and we've got our Facebook ID. So we can get all of this information and pull it into usable JavaScript values that we can then use for our sharing. So when we do load up all of this information in the DOM, we could set it as variables and then call to it simply by having JavaScript functions. So the way to do that, so we're going to first do this within JavaScript. It's going to be a lot cleaner in jQuery because you're able to access this meta information directly. So you don't need all of this get elements by tag name, which creates an array. So within meta tags, I'm just creating an array here by getting all the elements by tag name. So it's going through the browser information, and it's taking all of these meta tags and it's putting all of this information into an array. And that's what we saw here on the right hand side. So again, this is JavaScript DOM. If you're not familiar with JavaScript DOM, we also have another tutorial that will walk you through in more detail about what the DOM is and how to use it. But for this lesson, we're just going to work with that DOM information, get elements by tag name, meta, and then here we're just consoling log out the meta tags. So console logs out that array. Here we built over a function. And with this function, essentially what this does is this scans through the meta tags array, and this is a solution that we have for JavaScript as opposed to jQuery, where you could simply select that particular meta tag. With JavaScript, unfortunately, you do have to loop through all the available meta tags, and then you can pick out the different meta tags. So here we're just calling into that function, get meta tag info, and this is the function, this is the tag that we're going to be looking for. We're going to call through that meta tags array, whatever length of array it is, and loop through that array and return back this information. So it's getting that property, that selected property, and if it matches the name or the attribute property, it's going to return that content that's available in there. And again, going over into the DOM, you can see that we do have that content, and we'd have to go through and pick it out. So again, it's a little bit more of a process, time-consuming process, but we are able to get back, as we can see, we are able to get back a title and an image URL. And then this information now we can use within these share tags, and this is going to save us from reloading this. So all we have to do, we just have to load this into values, and we're just going to create a new function that we're going to call when we do click these social buttons, and we're just going to indicate which button we want to click, and that's all that's going to be contained within the hyperlink. So we're going to directly be calling over to the functions. We're not going to use event listeners for this lesson, but if you are using jQuery, again, it's really easy to set up those event listeners. Maybe you could just put a class there and just put an ID. So we're going to go through that in a later lesson as well, but for now we're just going to use JavaScript and set this up. We're just going to be using this onClick JavaScript open and pulling that into a function, so social share, and that's going to be the function that we're going to work with, and just setting that up there. And then here we're going to use social network so that we can pull through that and we can get back the URLs that we need to share. So that's going to be, so we're going to maybe place an array or something, an object with these URLs, and then we're going to load in these variables dynamically. So again, so we don't have to load them and rewrite them for every href, and we can really begin to clean that up in that format.